Returning to the show is Bradley Moss. He's a partner at the Mark Zaid law firm. He specializes in national security law and specifically classification. So, as I said, Brad, you're a bullish man, always have been on the Twitter platform where we've known each other now for several years. But I have always appreciated your analysis. You put this out. Let's put this up there on the screen after the release of the affidavit. Quote, "I've seen enough, folks. Donald Trump will be indicted in the classified documents matter. I'm placing my marker."
Bold.
Now, tell us why you came to that conclusion, Brad. You've been involved in several of these classification cases, defending many clients and others, and seen the way the FBI handles itself. Why are you putting that out there, even given the redacted affidavit?
Sure. So for two reasons. One is we now know for more, with confirmation, not just from media reporting, we now have, kind of the clarity of what exactly was found in the initial set of boxes that were recovered in January. We now know that there were top secret documents with including markings for human intelligence sources, including markings for signal intercepts and for FISA information. So there's no indication, of course, in any of this that any of this was declassified. The government even included in the affidavit, from what we've been able to see, they preempted the concern about the idea that maybe Donald Trump had somehow declassified all this on his way out the office. Clearly, the magistrate judge didn't find anything to that. The Trump team has had 3 opportunities to present any evidence beyond speculation and conjecture to indicate that was the case. They've provided nothing. So that was one part. But what made it worse, what truly led me to cross this line, is that the obstruction issue is what's going to catch him in the end, because that's almost always what causes the government to actually pursue a prosecution here. It wasn't enough for him to take the documents. It wasn't enough for him to take months to turn it over. It's that they turned over stuff in January and they found there was still stuff missing. More stuff was taken in June with the subpoena. They found more stuff was missing. When they go back with the search warrant here, they've got enough evidence, presumably from these witnesses they reference in the memorandum to seal, to indicate documents have been moved. They've been relocated. They're not just in the storage room anymore. And sure enough, when they execute the search warrant, lo and behold, they find documents in other locations. They find the classified documents in Donald Trump's personal office, in the closet of the bedroom. That's not where they were told to be, even if to the extent they were still there, they were supposed to be locked up in the storage room. So that rises the issue to that of concealment, of resisting efforts to properly recover these documents. That's why I believe, and this again, just my pure personal opinion based off professional experience, but why I believe there will be an indictment in this case unless something else changes between now and the final decision on that.
So there was not a whole lot new that was revealed in this affidavit. As you put it, it was sort of confirmation of some of the reporting that has been out there already. But a lot of people did note this line about how they expected to find probable cause of, they expected to find evidence of obstruction. Do you think that that's sort of what they were looking for, the fact that the documents had been moved and weren't in the original location where they were meant to be, that sort of demonstrated there was an intent to conceal these items?
Yes, absolutely. And we know from the media reporting that in addition to the witnesses, there have been surveillance videos that were subpoenaed from the Trump organization that cover that part of Mar-a-Lago. Presumably, that's what was being relied upon by the government here as part of their obstruction argument, that they have proof beyond just the witnesses, but they have video proof of boxes coming in and out, of boxes being relocated, of documents being relocated. That's why Donald Trump is in trouble. And it bears to mention here, we know this amount of information in a way that you normally never know pre-indictment. Probable cause affidavits virtually never get unsealed until there's already an indictment. We have what we have at this point, and it's, admittedly still minor, but we have what we have because of the public interest in this case, because it's a former president. Generally speaking, this kind of transparency never occurs.
Yeah, it's interesting also, like, as you said, we almost never get that. Now, in terms of the pushback from the Trump administration, what lines of defense can you anticipate working at a legal level should an indictment proceed, if any, given what we've seen from their statements going forward?
Sure. So there's going to be a couple. One is going to be that he had designated these documents as personal records. He's going to rely, and this is where Tom Fitton and Judicial Watch come into play because they keep citing this 2012 case. He's going to claim that all this got redesignated as personal, They're under the Presidential Records Act. Therefore, there was no authority at all to ever go after it. No one can reclassify it under that statute. Of course, no evidence has been produced that he ever took such action. No documentation, no letters, no memoranda, no affidavits, nothing has been produced to corroborate that. And the same goes with this issue about whether or not Donald Trump declassified everything. The government preemptively addressed this. They included Kash Patel's Breitbart article from May, in which he goes on record publicly saying, all this was declassified already. I was in the room when it was all declassified. Where's the evidence? Where's the proof? They've provided nothing to corroborate this assertion. Those are the two critical ones up front. They'll also bring up, bad faith prosecution, selective political aims. That's been tried before over and over. Go ask Steve Bannon how well those arguments work. It never goes anywhere.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about one of the sort of like competing analyses here from Alan Dershowitz, who at times has sort of sided with some of the Trump legal analysis. He basically says that, yes, they have enough to indict him, but that they shouldn't, and he doesn't think that they will, because it would fail to meet what he called the Nixon and Clinton test, the former being the need to establish broad bipartisan support. We actually have an element for this we can put up on the screen. And the latter being a demonstration that Trump's conduct is materially worse than Hillary Clinton's own past mishandling of classified information. So he's basically saying, like, look, if this was regular citizen, yeah, probably gets indicted. But because it's a former president, doesn't meet this, what he describes as the Nixon and the Clinton test. What do you make of that argument?
Yeah, so it'll be fascinating if there is ultimately an indictment for Donald Trump to stand before the judge. The judge says, how do you plead, sir? And he goes, I plead but Clinton, Your Honor. Okay. This isn't going to work. One, the Nixon standard was political. Of course, there needed to be bipartisan consensus. They were trying to impeach and convict a sitting president. This is an impeachment. This is a criminal matter. The views of the public are specifically not supposed to be taken into consideration. It's supposed to be the enforcement of the rule of law, not playing to political polling. The Clinton standard, I keep seeing this, and I think it was Senator Cornyn was posting an op-ed from the Wall Street Journal saying, well, if they didn't do it for Clinton, why would they do it for Trump? It's two very different scenarios, and I get why in the mix of all this, in the 24/7 media environment, people aren't necessarily catching the nuance. Hillary Clinton's problem was that there was spillage, that people from their unclassified government accounts were emailing her personal account, which of course was unclassified. And within those emails, which were not marked as classified, within those emails, people let classified information spill into it. They said more than they should have, but they could never prove intent on Hillary's part to create a system designed to send or receive classified information. They found she was reckless. I said at the time, her staff probably would never get clearances again, but there was no evidence of the intent for the relevant statutory provision. That's not in play for Donald Trump. These are properly marked classified documents. They've got the top secret markings on the headers and the footers. It says things like HCS for human intelligence. It says things like SI for signals intelligence. There's no dispute. There's no doubt these things were marked, and anyone seeing them should have known this was classified information. That's what distinguishes it from the Hillary Clinton saga. And because it's also under a different statutory provision, because it's the Espionage Act, the intent is irrelevant. He had the documents, he was told he couldn't have them, and he didn't turn them back over. End of discussion.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, regardless of how you feel about the Hillary Clinton situation, the fact that one elite got off the hook doesn't mean that all elites in perpetuity should also get off the hook. So in my opinion, that's why that standard fails. But let me ask you, and I tend to be more on your side on these issues, but I want to play devil's advocate here. There are a lot of people who say, listen, it's different when you're talking about a former president, when you're talking about someone who was popularly elected, when you're talking about someone who has a massive base, where there are concerns about, sort of dividing the country apart. And obviously, Trump's allies playing that concern up. Lindsey Graham on the shows over the weekend saying that there will be riots in the street if Trump is ultimately prosecuted. So what would you say to people who say it should be considered, there should be a different standard for if you're talking about a former president, because we ultimately have a democratic process to adjudicate these things, and the real answer and real response to Donald Trump and his crimes is to defeat him in the election system?
Yeah, so my response is that should absolutely be a consideration, of course, when deciding whether or not to move forward with indictment. You have to consider the politics, of course, but it should not be the final, the dispositive factor. There should not be a separate standard that anybody of particular political importance cannot be held accountable under the laws, under our criminal provisions, just like any other citizen. Hillary Clinton should not have been above the law. That's why she was investigated. You didn't see Democrats saying we're going to riot in the streets if Hillary Clinton is indicted. And it's just like that. Donald Trump should be properly investigated here. And if an indictment is warranted, if the facts and the law meet the crime, that's the job of the Justice Department there to prosecute that case without regard for whether or not it is politically popular. If Donald Trump has a viable legal defense, he can put that forward before the court, just like any other citizen. He shouldn't get a special privilege.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see how it play out. Always appreciate your analysis, Brad. Thanks for coming back to the show.
Not a problem, anytime.
Absolutely, man. Thank you guys so much for watching. We really appreciate it. It's always fun in order to do this show. And listen, it's a privilege every single day. We've got great stuff in the pipeline, literally right after we wrap here. We have a very big and exciting announcement, not just new live show dates, but some interesting new developments, which is only enabled by our premium subscribers. You guys are the ones who fund our abilities. To all of those who stepped up from the monthly to the yearly, you're literally the reason why we're able to do what we're going to announce very, very soon. And of course, you will be the very first to find out. So for those of you who help us out, just can't thank you enough. If you can join us, there's a link down there in the description. Otherwise, we'll see you all tomorrow.
Love you guys. See y'all tomorrow. Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.